I think most people are interested in the end product, not so much, you know, how we got. But I give you the information on how we harvest, what it's all about, maybe, and what the lobster industry is like. I do lobster. I lobster in Cape Cod Bay. Surprisingly, the lobster trap basics hasn't changed much. The only thing that's different is the new traps don't make good coffee tables. The old wooden traps were a little more appealing, and most people liked it. Also, another fact that most people don't understand is lobsters don't come out of the water this color. They come out in a variety of colors, green or an off color like that. They also don't come out of the water with those little handcuffs on them, the bands, so we have to put them on. But basically, whether the lobster is harvested locally or near shore or offshore, Homarus americanus, the American lobster, the most identifiable of all seafoods in the world, the two large claws here, is only harvested, only in the world, only harvested from the Northwest Atlantic, from Newfoundland down south to Long Island, New Jersey. As you go further south, a little less, but the population is there. From near shore, right on the beach, right in harbors even, all the way out to 200 miles, the lobster is pursued, as it were. The method of harvesting the lobster, again, hasn't changed much. We haven't developed a better mousetrap. We haven't figured a better way to catch this animal. First of all, the lobster itself is an arthropod. It's a crustacean in the ocean. An arthropod is an insect. So the lobster is the first cousin of a spider, a big bug. The lobster itself doesn't really have a brain. It has a central nervous system. It makes me a little nervous that I'm trying to outguess an animal that doesn't have a brain. It doesn't work well, bad for my ego, and we continue to try to go after it. Successful or not, but we continue to try to pursue it. As far as the basics of the trap and the harvesting, people are familiar with the buoy system, which a lot of my buoys I see as ornaments on a lot of fences and houses around. The lobsterman picks his own coloration pattern. All you want to do is to make sure that somebody that is near you or in a harbor near you doesn't have the same color pattern. So there is no rhyme or reason to what we do for the color pattern. The state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, issues us an identification number that we have to put on our buoy and in our trap with a tag. Now, Massachusetts has issued about 1,400 commercial lobster licenses, of which about 900 are active, and by that I mean they're out pursuing, making a living, or trying to harvest the lobsters. The others are inactive. They may be waiting or whatever, I'm not sure. The state also puts a trap limit on us. The maximum number of traps that can be put in the water is a maximum of 800 pots. Now, we don't bring them out every day and bring them in every day. They're put in the water, and you have to maintain and try to keep up with them. So the traps themselves may be as a single trap. In other words, there'd be one buoy, a line goes down one trap, or it may be in a series of trawl. They're put together in a sequence, so you have a buoy, a series of pots in a line, and another buoy. Now, a lot of people that travel along the coastline are sailing or vessels or anything else, or if you're going out fishing and you look and you see a lobster buoy and you say, well, I don't want to get near it, I don't want to get my anchor in it, I don't want to go over, I don't want to get my fishing gear in it. A pointer is, if it's a trawl, on one end there probably would be a little flag, a little better than this thing, but there'd be a flag on there on one end. On the other end there would be a double buoy. So if you happen to be between a flag and you see a double buoy somewhere else, the chances are there are traps in between. It's not a trap and then another trap, so just a little bit of information there. Massachusetts is the only state that also is 100% whale safe, and by that I mean we avoided total interactions with the great whales to avoid any type of entanglement or anything possible. All of our gear is equipped with breakaways that break away at 500 or 600 pounds. It may be a link, it may be a system of attachments on the line itself. realized that the great whales, humpback, finback, right whales, the right whale, by the way, the northern right whale is the most endangered mammal on the planet. And I fish at Cape Cod Bay, and that's where, for some reason, they just seem to want a vacation. So we have been whale safe for a long time. All of these are baleen whales. They feed on the plankton mass. And the baleen, this large sheet of baleen in their mouth, might inadvertently get a line. If the buoy is caught, it snaps off. The line goes right through. There is no problem. So, also, between the traps, we used to use a polypropylene, a floating line. This was easy for us. First of all, it was cheaper. Second, if it wouldn't chafe on the bottom and wear out quicker. Second, if we did inadvertently lose any of our gear, we could grapple it up quicker. We've changed to sinking ground line. This was at the lobsterman's expense to avoid any of the interactions again with the whale. So the buoy, the floats, all of this we've done to accommodate the whale. No problem. The last thing I want to do is to lose $1,000 worth of gear anyway and get in trouble with the federal government for the Endangered Species Act or something. So we've done this. The trap. All right. How the trap work? Hasn't changed much. Other than, like I say, it's gone from maybe the wooden trap to the wire trap. It's easier. This one doesn't have the ballast in it, but it would normally have ballast. Basically, what happens is we would be putting bait in there. Now, the bait may go on a spike. It may go into a bag, and we put it in. Bait varies. It could be whole fish. It may be herring or mackerel, menhaden, pogie. Or it could be the fish after the fish has been cleaned, after the meat has been taken, the fillets over here at the cook tent, all of those fish, they're used for bait. So we now, what used to be thrown away, we have to go buy that. So we're using that for bait. So we put the bait on this end right in here and hang it. Now, this side has two entrances right in here. And the lobsters will walk. I mean, they don't necessarily just back up. They don't always go backwards. They walk forward. They have their antenna. They're very receptive to the bait and whatever it is that would attract them within the bait, the oils or whatever. So they would walk in. Now, we call this side the kitchen. So this part of the trap right here is the kitchen part. They can come in, they can sample the bait, move around. Some of them, they walk right back out again and back and forth or whatever, but that's it. They get a little morsel, a little piece, they become very protective and they start to back up. Now, they back up this side and up this net over here, and they drop in on this end. We call this side the parlor. So they've gone from the kitchen into the parlor. And hopefully, when the trap is hauled, there's someone in the parlor. Now, we do have regulations on size and size limits. Not a quota on the amount, which is good, but on the size limits, there's a minimum, and we measure it on the carapace. The carapace is from the eye socket to the back of the middle part of the body, to the beginning of the tail. And we measure the lobster there. There's a minimum size. It's pretty much consistent throughout the harvesting area. And this would equate to about a pound lobster. We also have a maximum gauge. The maximum gauge on that is about 5 inches, maybe a 4.5, 5 pound lobster, and this is pretty consistent throughout the harvesting area. Now, anything below that size, we release. Anything above that size, we release. We want to maintain the sustainability of the resource. Next, if a lobster comes up, and it's a female lobster, and it has eggs, the eggs are very visible on the underside of the tail. What we do then is that lobster goes back in the water. Furthermore, we mark it by putting a little notch on one of the tail flippers. If by chance we harvest a lobster, a female lobster, there are no eggs, but there is a notch, it's a proven breeder. We put that back in, again maintaining more of the sustainability of the lobster. Now, further to guarantee that the smaller lobsters are going out, we put these little escape panels in the traps. These escape panels allow sublegal small lobsters to walk out. And hopefully they'll escape out through there. If we pull the trap up, there's a lot of sublegal lobsters in there. When we're throwing them over the side of the boat, they're small. We have a lot of predation between the surface and the bottom in the form of all the finfish that are swimming around. somewhere they've learned that the lobster boat is like the ice cream truck. So they're kind of coming in under us, and they're right there. So we want them all. We want all these sublegal lobsters to go right out the panels, so we have them. Furthermore, on the panels, we have to have at least one. Most of my traps, this is just a demo, have 3 escape panels. One of the panels has to have degradable rings on it. In other words, if this trap were inadvertently lost, the buoy was gone, it was a single pod, it was left on the bottom. After a period of time, this would, neutrally buoyant, would float up a larger opening and allow everything to escape on a constant basis. So it would not continue to fish. Now, the female lobster, and the life cycle of the lobster, very unusual. That female lobster could have and hold 5,000 up to 10,000 to 100,000 eggs. And that lobster will release those eggs under whatever conditions exist. It may be water temperature, salinity, anything. When those eggs hatch out, they move right to the surface. They look like mosquito larvae. They're just little wigglers that are right up on the surface. Now they're part of the plankton mass, and this plankton mass is consumed by everything in the ocean, including other plankton. The whales and everything else are feeding on this biomass that's on the surface. In order to grow, the lobster molts. It sheds right out of that exoskeleton, that hard outside covering. When it molts, it sheds, it splits, it increases in size. After about 6 weeks, 4-8 molts, that lobster is about 1 inch long. Now it looks like kind of like a legitimate lobster. It shows 2 little claws and everything. It settles to the bottom. Without a secure hiding place, that lobster now becomes food for everything that's feeding on the bottom. So the rest of its little life, it's spent hiding and staying out of every predator's way. It takes about 8 years to 10 years, in the range of 22 to 24 molts, to reach that 1 pound, 1.25 pound lobster that you see in the markets. Of the 100,000 eggs, maybe 1 reaches that size. So the amount of lobsters, the amount of eggs, the amount of biomass and plankton out there is pretty extreme. And again, we're working to maintain that by releasing all of the eggs, the females, the proven breeders, the larger lobsters, which on the female side produce many more eggs. So it stands to reason to have those released into the marine system. We do have tags that we put in on a regular basis issued by the Commonwealth, and again, all of this goes through. Now, people have questions, so I would answer any questions that you have, whether it's about why I hear the lobsters screaming when I throw them in boiling water. The lobsters aren't screaming when you throw them in boiling water. All right? What happens a lot of times is, this is an animal that's incredible. This vessel could pull up codfish from 600 feet, and the swim bladder's out. You pull a lobster up and it's ready to do battle. It can adjust and purge the water out of its system and start to take the air directly in. And oftentimes, if they've been out of the tank enough and you put them in, you'll hear air escaping. So that's about it. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. All right, the eggs getting fertilized, very unique life cycle here. The female lobster will mate only when she molts. So when she molts, she's soft. It's just as soft as a jello, very soft. And she prefers to mate only with a male of the same size. So hence, if the big ones on the female side are released, we have a gauge that we put the large males back. So this would do it. Now, she can hold that sperm for up to 12 months and release the eggs and fertilize the eggs. They're attached on the bottom side of that tail with a glue. It's a particular type of a substance she produces. She can hold those eggs for up to another 12 months before they will mature enough to be released. So could conceivably have a gestation period of maybe 2 years, up to 24 months. It could happen. And all of this, again, we try to maintain this as a resource by doing everything in our power to keep that constant. So the females with the eggs go back in the water. The females that have been proven, they're marked, they're notched with eggs. If they have no eggs, they go back. Any other questions? Well, yes, sir.
How is the supply these days? Has it been maintained?
Yeah, well, the supply is great. The demand, I'm not so sure. I mean, the price we're getting, I don't want to sound poverty broken, but the price we're getting is what we got 25 years ago. Yeah, the boat price, the ex-vessel price, is about what we got 15 to 25 years ago. The cost of doing business is 4 times that. I mean, the cost of diesel fuel is up. The cost of bait, what we used to almost get free now, $40 for one of these fish boxes or something, for that to go out. And everything has gone up. We do have a good supply. It's a very healthy resource. One of the things that we're working on is Massachusetts has this new Commonwealth Quality Program. And basically what this is the state of Massachusetts is promoting the local industry. And the Commonwealth Quality goes with the farmers for the produce, tomatoes, carrots, cucumbers, whatever, the foresters for the wood products, cranberry harvesters, the dairy farmers, and lobster. So that you know that if it falls under the Commonwealth Quality, not only do we follow all of the rules and regulations of our gear and everything else, but that they were harvested under the best management practices, they are local, and it is traceable to the harvester. It could be traced right back to me, for example, so that lobster, again, lobster is harvested from Canada, which is the #1 harvesting supplier of lobsters in the world. The Canadians do about 110, 120 million pounds annually. Maine is 70 million, up in Massachusetts 15 million pounds annually. So all of these, but Canada by far, a lot of the product, educated consumer may not know exactly where it was harvested. But this new program, which is in its infancy, it's being kicked off, and we're trying to promote it, will show that it was a local, and supporting the local. Not, like we say, not that our cucumbers are better than Connecticut's, or not that our lobsters are better than Maine. They are, but it's one of those. That's all. Yes, sir. Well, the depth of the lobsters, surprising. We have lobsters that are harvested right near shore. I mean, at certain times of the year, within 10 feet of water. They're there, out to the canyons at 1,000 feet. In where I am, Cape Cod Bay, it's pretty much the same right across the bottom, maybe 120 feet, from anywhere from 40, 20 feet, 40, 60, 80. They move. Lobsters migrate. They move in and out. You may have heard that the southern New England is in somewhat of a lobster crisis, that this part here is in a management plan where there are 2 extremes. One, do nothing, and 2, have a 5-year moratorium, a total ban on lobster in the southern New England waters. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. They want to reduce by 10% something. And basically, the reason for the fewer lobsters in any area is multiple. #1 is temperature. They're very, very susceptible to temperature. They have an ideal temperature range. If it's too cold, they'll move. If it's too hot, they'll move. And there's been cycles in the climate, up and down, and this is one of them in the Buzzards Bay area. The water is very warm, and the lobsters have begun to go out. So as a result, it's quite possible that there may be additional management, but basically it is temperature related. Salinity, food availability, all of these things dictate how they react. Again, we tried to outguess this animal. It doesn't always work. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Well, lobsters are scavengers, all right? And yes, you're right. And I say the food availability. You have to have something to scavenge on. And a lot of times, certain different ecosystems are out of whack for the same reason. They react differently to the water temperature. Take for shellfish, for example. There may be an abundance one year in an area of shellfish. Well, when they're there, lobsters have no trouble crushing a clam or anything with their crusher claw, so there's good food availability. Crabs and everything else, but if certain things change, that food abundance goes. So again, back and forth. They are scavengers. Yes. They do well. Again, we're going to feed them the stuff that's being thrown away on coastline, so it works out that advantage. Yes, sir. Yep. Yes. Well, no, they hadn't been extruded. The question here is that when you cook a lobster, sometimes you open the lobster up. If you get the tomale, the green, that's the liver part of the lobster, and it's a delicacy for a lot of people. And a lot of people just pour it out to the side. Other times when it's cooked, you'll find that in the back of the tail there is this red, the coral. That's the eggs that have not been extruded. She's holding them. I said that she could hold the eggs, hold the sperm, and she could do that. There is on the market today the eggs as lobster caviar. So it has been put out as one, and a lot of people consider that a delicacy also, the coral, the cooked up, they call it the coral. Oftentimes, people will open up a lobster and it's black. It is like a black goo in there, and they go, black, what's this? Well, those are eggs that haven't been developed. And you cooked, we don't know. We know it's a male and a female, and the only way that we can tell on a male or a female lobster is the last set of swimmerettes. The lobster is a decapod. It has 10 walking legs, but it has a series of swimmerettes. And the last set of swimmerettes on a female are feathery, and on a male they're rigid. And they're the last set way up just before off the tail. So we didn't know if it was a female or a male, but that's about all. If it doesn't have a notch and it doesn't have eggs and it's a female, it's legal to keep. We would keep it. Now, the status of the eggs within it, we wouldn't know. And it could be they haven't developed, and when it's cooked, it could be the black. That's okay. It could be brushed off, or it could be red coral. So it could be any of that. That's a strong possibility. All of that is quite there. Any other questions? Yes, sir. No, they don't. The question was, how do they know how many traps we have? We have the number of traps and the policing of it is to the Massachusetts Environmental Police. They do a good job. We are issued a trap tag, and that trap tag corresponds to my identification number the state gave me, and it's limited to the number I can order. So I can't put in more. If a trap comes up and it does not have tags, if law enforcement pulled one and there were no tags, it may have broken off, it may not. They may give you the benefit of the doubt, but that's it. No, there's no way of knowing if I had 100, 400, or 800. They're not going to count them, but they're going to be able to determine. When I bring them out on my boat, they can look. When I bring them in, they can look. There better be a tag in there, and it better correspond. And the tags have my number, the area I fish, the zone that I fish in, and they're sequentially numbered. So all of that is there. Yes, sir. Well, on hauling the traps, how often? We try to do it. Again, it depends upon the movement of the lobsters. The traps go in the water. Water temperature would dictate how much they move. If it's colder water, they're more lethargic. They don't move as much. Warmer water, they're a little more active. Too warm water, they're gone. We would try to have to haul the gear within 3 days or 4 days. So by giving it a little bit of a soak time, it gives us an opportunity to hope they go in. They go in and they come out. They're in and out all the time. The University of New Hampshire a while ago put a camera on a trap up above and watched it for a period of 24 hours. They had over 1,000 hits on lobsters going over, in, out, and around. Now, I always said that, well, these 3 lobsters got together and said, hey, we're on camera, let's go back again. It's us again, forward. You go first, Ralphie. Yeah, okay. But they did that. When they hauled it, there were 2 over here. So all the rest had gone in and out and moved around. And it's incredible. So we try to do it. There is a law that you have to maintain and pull that within a 30-day. And that could be law enforcement, environmental police could put a particular tag on it, and it says remove this when you haul the trap. If they come back, it's still there, and it's been 35 days. Obviously, you didn't haul it to read it. So this type could work. So yes, they do that. Yes, sir. Yep. All right, well, the thing was, if you go through areas and on some of the traps, there would be a buoy and then a little toggle floating it up. The bottom there may be very rocky and they don't want the ropes to get caught, so they would try to float that rope up. And the reason you use a little more line in there is if there's a waves or wave action, you have a little more scope. But if there's too much and it wraps around boulders, you put a toggle partway through to bring it up off the bottom. This happens, and there's nothing around that at all. But yeah, that's pretty much. Massachusetts does allow every family the opportunity to purchase a family lobster license. You can buy 10 pots, get a family lobster harvesting permit, buy 10 traps, put them in the water, and fish them. And then you can find out that you may want to go to the restaurant after a while because the poverty crates you pull, and by the time average trap is anywhere from $65 to $100 a trap. The rope and the buoy and everything else adds another $25. In 10 pots adds up pretty quick. And it's a great experience. Let's go out there, bring the boat, we'll pull it, the kids will love it, everything is great, and we'll pull them up. Well, there's nothing in there. Well, there's nothing. We'll try to get later and later. Then you go out and you got to put 10 pots in the water, storm comes by, you go out and you find 5. Then you go back out and you find 3. Maybe I should have done something. But Massachusetts does allow that. So everyone can put out at least 10 pots. Yes, sir. Good question. What's the determination of where you put the pots? Experience, pretty much. It's again, like I say, you try to go to an area. At certain times, habitat plays the most important role. The Maritimes in Maine have almost ideal habitat because of the rocks. This is a perfect place for them to hide, to bury themselves into, and everything else. For us in Cape Cod Bay, inside of Buzzards Bay and out and everything, the bottom is pretty much the same. It's very little ledge, very little there. We know if there's ledge, we'll go there. There'll be a lot of pots there. There'll be other guys there. You know they're going to be there. So basically, experience would tell us at a certain time of the year they may be moving here or there, so we try to keep in leapfrog with them. The season for Massachusetts is all 12 months. What dictates the fact that we don't fish all 12 months is Mother Nature, the winter storms and everything else. And the fact that the lobsters have moved, they do become much more inactive, they do hold up. And there are a lot of lobstermen that fish all 12 months. The offshore lobster industry goes out to George's Bank. There are vessels in the 70-foot range to a 90-foot range that go out on George's Bank. They're trip boats. They will go for 5 days, 6 days at a time, and they'll work on George's and Little George's inside. The rest of the industry is near shore. We go out and we come back at the same time. And it's pretty much that way. Yes, sir. Well, back and then front. Yes, sir. How far do you have to stay away from somebody else's trap? Well, there's a lot of unwritten rules out there, like areas. If I said, well, I'm going to come down here to New Bedford and I'm going to bring my boat down, I'm going to set my gear out here, I might get one of these, it's not your best interest to do that. Some guys don't like that. Not me, of course, but some other guys might. So there isn't anything. What you don't want to do is, if I'm setting trawls, I want to look to see which direction the other guys are putting their trawls. I don't want to cross them because if they're under me, I didn't go out there and put them under me. They may try to cut and tie me, or they may not, and I got to pull both ends. So you stay away. That's all. In one of the things, like a lot of the family licenses, one of the things they learn is there are limits. They just stay within an area. They'll catch their lobsters or not. So don't go in other areas. It's kind of unreal. Yes, sir. All right. Yes, lobsters do have diseases. There's gaffkemia, which is a red tail, which can transmit through an entire bunch. There is and has been this area, primarily because the warm water has had a shell disease, a shell rot, which has works on the shell. Doesn't affect the meat or the quality of the meat, but it affects the appearance of the lobster. And most people, when you go out to a restaurant, you prefer to get that lobster with 2 nice claws, a handsome one. Well, we catch them with 1 big one, 1 small one, no claw, 1 claw, all this also. They're different. And the ones that get any of the diseases, you know, they may be lost in a mold. So we'd put them back. And we've been studying that for years. Well, yes, sir. Last question.
What's the best way to cook when you buy one, purchase one, and you can't eat it like that day?
All right. A good question. When you purchase a lobster, what's the length? What can you do and everything else? You get that lobster. First of all, that lobster is good and lively, and it's moving around and everything. What I do is I bring them home, and I put them in my vegetable crisper. First of all, that's one thing that's empty in my house, vegetable. So I put them in a vegetable crisper, and I put a damp cloth on them. One you don't want to do is, you know, people will say, well, I put them in a bathtub, I'm going to put some water in there to keep them alive. Well, they drown in fresh water, so you don't want to let them get ice and let the ice melt and let them do that. They drown in that. Put the damp cloth, they'll keep for probably 48 hours. Yeah, they could keep for the next day. And if they do, if you pick them up and they're very limp or anything else, then cook it up right away. And when you cook a lobster, one of the things you can do is you look at that lobster, and if the tail is curled up tight, it was okay when it went in. If it's out and flapping around, it may be a little questionable. You want to check that out. Well, thank you very much. Before she gives me the hook, appreciate it.